In this section, we will discuss gaining superuser access. As an ordinary user, we are restricted as to what files we can view. For example, the etc shadow file is permission denied if we try to view its contents. In order to get permission, we would need to switch to a user that has permission to view this file. The root account is our superuser or administrator account who can view any file on the system. There are several methods in which we can switch to become the root user and gain the privilege to view other files. We could, of course, log off and log back in again. Another method is to use a command called su. The su command by itself will prompt for the root password. It assumes that we are switching to the root user. I provide the password and my prompt is changed that I am now root at desktop 1 and I have the hash symbol that indicates the root account. The ID command shows that I have been switched to the root account UID 0. When I'm done issuing commands for which I need this privilege, I would exit the shell to return to my previous account, in this case the student account. The su command has a -- help option as well. It defines that if a user is not given, we assume root. It also allows us to specify a specific user. So if we need to test the environment of another user or see what privilege they have, we can use su to switch to that user as well. When we start an additional shell through a script, opening a terminal window, or in this case with su, a series of scripts are run in order to set up the environment for that user. When we log into a system, those scripts are run along with some additional scripts specific to the login environment. If we are trying to be another user, it is very common that we want to be that user completely in their environment as if we had logged in directly. For su to accomplish that, we need to make the shell a login shell by adding the dash option. It can also be specified with a -l or a -- login. There are a few additional environment settings that are changed when we use this dash. Let's look at a couple of examples. Remember that ID shows me who I am now. There is a home variable that shows what my home directory is. There is also a path variable that shows a list of directories that are searched when I look for executables. This may include customized scripts that are stored in my home directory. When I use su and I switch to the root account, it has not changed my current working directory. However, it has changed my home directory variable. If I use cd, I would be taken to my home directory. The path variable has not been changed. If I look at its output here, I see references to home student. So I've switched to root and I have the privilege to access files such as looking at etc shadow. But I do not have the complete environment and I may be missing some scripts that have been written specifically for the root account. I'll exit the shell and let's come in again this time using the dash. This time it has changed me to my home directory and it has also updated my path variable and now I see references to root's home directory. I now have a complete login environment for the root account by adding the dash. This works similarly when I switch to other users as well. su is a convenient way to switch users, and the exit command allows me to exit back to my ordinary user. While I'm in an su session, I can perform any tasks allowed by that user. If I'm root, that can include accidentally causing damage to the system. So I do not want to stay as the root user longer than I need to. Another common tool for escalating privilege is the sudo command. This command is specifically designed so that it runs a single command with the privileged escalation and then exits automatically, so that I do not accidentally stay in a privileged shell and make inadvertent changes to the system. The way that the sudo command works is that we place sudo in front of the command that we want to run. It's similar to a run as. So again, as my ordinary user, I do not have permission to view the shadow file. However, if I type sudo tail etc shadow, I'm being prompted for a password. This is the first time that I've used sudo as this particular user, so I'm getting a message that reminds me of appropriate use for this command. Notice that the password that's being prompted for is student's password. I'm going to gain root privilege, but I need to give the user's password, not the root password. And I've successfully run the command. If I go back and look and try to do a tail of etc shadow again, I'm once again permission denied. It only escalated my privilege for that one command. If I use sudo again, this time I did not get prompted for a password. The password that was given was cached, usually for 5 minutes, and I can continue to run additional sudo commands during that period without being asked for the password. For example, the var log messages file, typical log file on our system, is also restricted to root access. But with sudo, I'm able to view the contents of that file. Sudo privilege has to be set up in advance. If I look at the ID command here for student, I am a member of the group wheel as a supplementary group. Red Hat Enterprise Linux version 7 by default has sudo configured for any user which is a member of this group wheel to have sudo privilege. They'll be prompted for their own password but be able to run any command as the root user. If I switch to another user, such as my test user account, and I run sudo with etc, trying to view the etc shadow file, for example, again, it's the first time I've used it as this user, so I'm prompted with the warning message for appropriate use, and then also prompted for the password for this user. But then I get the message that test user is not in the sudoers file. It logs this incident as well. If I look at an ID for this user, they are not a member of the group wheel. If I want additional users to have this sudo privilege, I simply need to add them to the wheel group, and they will be able to run any command as the root user, thereby administering the system.